What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to the Stochastic Best Ball channel. We continue on the summer of drafting here, and we are introducing you to the Stochastic Best Ball rankings and projections. I almost said rankings and suggestions, which technically rankings are, if you think about it, but I digress. Nick Lepre is here to help me break down the NFC East, always the most exciting, drama-filled division in the NFL. Follow Nick at Notorious FNTSY. How are you today, buddy?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty solid this morning, and I'm pretty excited to talk about this. Other than the fact that we all know what's going to happen in the NFC East, most likely the Cowboys are going to win, and then they're going to play some team that they should easily beat in the first round, and then they're going to lose.
Wait a
So
minute. Wait a
that's
minute.
my
This
prediction.
team, well, that's a fine prediction. I think that's the most likely outcome. Certainly, that's what Vegas is saying. But doesn't this division turn over at like a ridiculous rate? Like, there's never the same division winner every single year. The
Oh yeah.
Eagles and the Cowboys consistently trade places, underperforming and overperforming. None of these teams can get a quarterback for multiple years. A Dak Prescott notwithstanding here. But this is a very exciting division from a fantasy football perspective because there
Yeah.
are elite players. There are players whom some might say were elite and past their prime, some on the rise. There are, a decent amount of players in the top 50 here, four players from the division in the ADP top 50. Actually, five, and one representative from every single team. So there's at least optimism at the top ends for these skill position players. Ready to dig into this one?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, leave us a comment, say hello as we move on here. The New York Giants are surprisingly the suggested bottom dwellers of this division. I'm not sure I agree with that, but their DraftKings Sportsbook win total sits at 7.0. New GM, new head coach, new offensive coordinator, new defensive coordinator. Honestly, they bring in a lot of firepower and previous success. Buffalo's Brian Dable comes in as the head coach now, and you still got Saquon Barkley going at the 16th overall pick in best ball drafts right now. And people are getting really pumped about Kadarius Toney as well, especially with training camp reports saying that he's clearly established himself as the number one receiver. He's moved up from a spring ADP of around 107th overall. He's now sitting at 76.6. Are you still taking Kadarius Toney at this higher ADP?
Yeah, I think that he's worth the pick. I'm not necessarily as ecstatic as I was a couple of months ago when you can get him much closer to
Sure.
Kenny Galladay past pick 100, but I'm still taking him. I've seen a decent amount of clips out of training camp, and Kadarius Toney still looks good. There have been some throws where looks like Daniel Jones just forgot how to play football, but that's just what you get when you get Daniel Jones anyways. So I think Kadarius Toney is a great player, and if you are in a league that allows you to get extra points for just beating the shit out of someone, I think Kadarius Toney's a great play there too.
Whoa.
You
Yeah,
remember when he fought that guy last year? That was awesome.
yeah. I mean, yeah. I do remember when he got kicked out of the game. Yes, because I played him in a season-long league and lost money on DFS. But looking at targets per route run, Kadarius Toney was one of the most effective wide receivers on a per route basis in the NFL. Number 7 among all wide receivers last year with a 29% targets per route run rate. The expected fantasy points per game were nothing special. Part of that was because he didn't put in a lot of complete games. His ankle was busted earlier in the
Yeah.
year. So let's see if he stays healthy here. I also like Kenny Galladay ADP, basically the same exact player, signed for the same exact amount of money
Mhm.
at a lower ADP. Basically, he's lower because of Kadarius Toney's optimism. And then we got to talk about two things here. One, Saquon Barkley continues to creep up into that mid or even top tier of the second round. I think that's fine. And two, is Wan'Dale Robinson, a second round pick for the New York Giants, not getting enough respect? He's still going at 188th overall right now. So talk to me about Saquon and then their second rounder, Wan'Dale Robinson.
Yeah. Now, off the top of your head, I wonder if you know the answer to this question. Who scored the most amount of touchdowns last season for the Giants? You know who it was?
Skill position players or
Yeah.
everyone?
Skill position.
Darius Slayton.
No, it was Saquon Barkley, and he only played a couple games.
That is
He,
atrocious.
he scored, I think, 4 touchdowns. I heard this stat the other day, and I was
That
shocked.
is.
Like, just going back real quick,
Uh,
when we're talking about Tony and Galladay, they both scored 0 touchdowns last year. Like, that's bound to change, right? And so that's why, taking things a little bit more seriously. I was fucking around when I was talking about Kadarius Toney. But yeah, I do really like Kadarius Toney as well as Kenny Galladay. But I think people do need to put a little bit more respect on Wan'Dale Robinson's name, especially since it seems like this Sterling Shepard injury is not a joke. It
Yeah.
seems like this is going to take up some serious time. And if you told me Sterling Shepard was going to be healthy for week 1, like I think that Sterling Shepard's a good enough player to where that could hold off Wan'Dale Robinson because they basically play the same position, right? So, in my opinion, if Shepard was healthy, I'd be afraid of Wan'Dale Robinson. But right now, Wan'Dale Robinson's looked excellent in training camp, so I'm very excited about him. And when it comes to Saquon Barkley, I'm still not as bullish on Saquon Barkley as you are. I'm not as excited about him, but I have been drafting him because you just can't deny the fact that there's a significant amount of upside there where this guy you draft in the second round ends up being a top 3 running back in fantasy. You're obviously hoping that he can stay healthy.
So think about him versus Nick Chubb for a second. I think in best ball drafts, you can see the potential for 25, 30-point games for Saquon Barkley much easier than Nick Chubb. And then think about him from a redraft perspective. I know we're on the best ball channel here, but think about him from a safety standpoint with basically nothing behind him. They have Matt Breida behind him. Basically, he's the only one who's going to get more work. I honestly think Wan'Dale Robinson, who we still need to talk about, is the best option out of the backfield after Saquon Barkley right now, because Wan'Dale Robinson was used very uniquely in college, started at Nebraska, and then went over to Kentucky. This guy played big competition in the SEC, second round draft capital, and we're basically fading him because he's small. Like, he's 5'8", 180, and everyone hates small receivers until they turn into Tyreek Hill and they're speeding by everyone. And I'm not saying that Wan'Dale Robinson is Tyreek Hill, but I really like this player as a second rounder, day 2 draft capital, essentially free, and I like stacking him up with Daniel Jones as well.
Yeah, this feels like we should be getting like LaVisca Chenault level hype for Wan'Dale. Like last year, remember when everyone's banging the drum?
That is a
for
good
LaVisca?
comp. Yes, yes.
But, LaVisca was in that really bad Jaguars offense. We didn't really see him get a lot of volume. Whereas here in New York with the Giants, going at a significant discount compared to where you had to draft Chenault last year, it seems like this is just a must draft kind of a player late in the draft, especially with the amount of upside he has. And if Saquon was to get they start minimizing the amount of touches he gets, maybe because he's banged up, then we could see, like you said, Wan'Dale Robinson get a bunch of carries. It wouldn't really surprise me. I'm not saying that he's like Deebo Samuel or something, right? That's crazy to say for someone to pick 180, but maybe closer to LaVisca than.
Well, one thing we should say is that with the success of Deebo Samuel in San Francisco, this is a copycat league. I wonder if we see a Swiss Army knife trend around the league for the next, say, 16 to 32 regular season games. We just see players and teams experimenting with that, and Wan'Dale Robinson fits into that role very nicely. Yeah. We would just love to see in general coaches utilizing players the way that they were successful in college, and this was a hybrid player who was very successful against big competition. Last thing we'll say here is that Daniel Bellinger might end up being the tight end you want here over Ricky Seals-Jones. They've switched places. Both are essentially free with 215 plus ADPs on Underdog, but Bellinger has become a what the heck tight end play for me and around the industry, whereas Seals-Jones, there's rumors he may not make the team. So
yeah, I was going to say Seals-Jones is a guy that I was pretty high on before because I really thought, like, how the hell is this? Like, rookie tight ends typically struggle in the NFL, like, unless you're Kyle Pitts or something crazy. So
Agreed.
my thought process initially was that Ricky Seals-Jones has never really been the guy, but when he's been put in the position to be the guy because of injuries, he's been good enough. So I'm a little bit shocked that Bellinger, as a rookie, is beating him out. But, I mean, I'm not going to just disbelieve what the people are saying, right? So it seems like Ricky Seals-Jones shouldn't be drafted. And like you said, you should just be taking Bellinger. Sorry about stomping all over you right there.
Yeah, no, you were absolutely right to make that point, and I completely agree. We'll obviously learn more when the team does something, but based on what the team is saying, the beat reporters are saying, this looks like Bellinger's job to lose. Darius Slayton may not make the team either. They're big play receiver for the last 2 years, so I'm not really in on him even at that free ADP. We move on to the Washington Commanders, who I would smash the under on this. I'm sorry, guys. A win total of 8.0. I know the NFC East is a little bit underperforming or expected to underperform, but this team is not not ready to compete, in my opinion. And I grew up in the DC area, and so maybe I'm a little bit biased here, negative bias, but Ron Rivera returns, hired in 2020. Basically, this whole coordinator system was hired in 2020. Rivera, Scott Turner, and Jack Del Rio. They lose Brandon Scherf, their high quality right guard. They trade just so much for Carson Wentz. And they signed Terry McLaurin to a mega deal, $68 million up to $71 million over 3 years. They also spent first-round draft capital on a wide receiver, and Jahan Dotson, who's going around 137th overall in ADP. The highest you have to pay in ADP, of course, is for McLaurin. This is what I call the obvious breakout zone. This 3rd to 5th round draft capital that wide receivers can sit there for year after year after year while players, fantasy gamers, just wait for them to break out. Like, you can name these players who sit there for a while: DJ Moore, Mike Williams, McLaurin. They just sit there in stasis until they're either first round picks or old. Like, even Cooper Kupp was here last year. It's kind of silly to me. D Hop at a time was here. Michael Thomas was here. I digress. Terry McLaurin is in the breakout zone for people. Is he going to break out in 22?
To be honest with you, I am like the biggest Terry McLaurin fan, but I just can't get excited about drafting him. I will draft him, but I'd rather draft the other receivers in that range. Like, you know how you just brought up DJ Moore? Like, DJ Moore versus Terry McLaurin. I'm taking DJ Moore basically all day because I think Baker is a humongous step up from what we've seen in Carolina. Where is Carson Wentz really that much of a step up from Taylor Heineke?
I don't know.
Yeah.
The beat reporters, they had we're recording this August 8th. It'll come out August 9th, and so there were some practices that the Commanders had in front of the public recently, and the reports were that Wentz was just wildly inaccurate. I do not have high hopes for this team, this player. I hope Jahan Dotson helps the team in a sense that Terry McLaurin can be more open, or if teams are focused defensively on McLaurin, that Jahan Dotson can actually become a playmaker here, because Logan Thomas, who they were counting on as a secondary option in the receiving game, still really struggling to get back from injury. He's essentially free in ADP after being around 185 earlier in the spring when we had more optimism. And then this running game, Nick, this is like a don't even get me started situation. Best ball might be a different story. I don't have 0% Antonio Gibson, but this is a mess, man. They keep spending 3rd round draft capital or the like. They now have Gibson, McKissick, who is a quality receiver out of the backfield, and Brian Robinson. Take your shots here, I guess, at ADP, but before ADP, not taking any Washington Commanders running back.
Yeah, I genuinely think I would rather get stabbed with some scissors, Brandon Marshall style, over drafting Antonio Gibson, if I'm being honest with you. Like, dude, Antonio, well, in best ball, I understand it, but in redraft, it's like, why is Antonio Gibson? I know this is a best ball video, but like, what are people seeing in the 4th round that they think, you know what, Antonio Gibson, that sounds like a great pick, right? It just makes no sense. I understand why you might take him at pick 70, 78. I've seen him go in like the 90s, all right? And I understand then you can take Antonio Gibson there. But at the end of the day, are you really expecting a top 10, top 12 performance? I think the time has passed for Gibson, and not because Gibson's a bad player, but because of the situation Riverboat Ron has put this offense in. There's talks about Brian Robinson seeing touches. McKissick's obviously not just going to disappear. So this is a very scary situation for Gibson. And again, I don't have 0 Gibson, but I don't have 20% Gibson, 10% Gibson. So
Yeah, gosh. And then you add the fact that Curtis Samuel, remember him? Curtis Samuel is currently healthy. He's got a 199 overall ADP on Underdog right now. He also has been effective out of the backfield as a hybrid player for Riverboat Ron in the past. This literally could be a 4-person committee. We're not saying with injuries and variants and things that go on in every NFL season, one of these players can't be successful. That's why we draft multiple teams in best ball tournaments, because we can actually, get these opportunities, these range of outcomes. But ultimately, this is a situation that's really, really tough. Really, really tough. Especially Antonio Gibson. I will say I'm seeing him creep out below the RB dead zone, like into 80, 90 overall territory. I'll take a shot there. I think my average ADP on Antonio Gibson, my average draft position is something like 85 to 90 overall. Like when he falls and nobody wants him, like, oh God, fine, is the situation I'll put myself in. After that, take Carson Wentz at your own risk. Alex Baker, our co-founder, has talked about the quality third quarterback as a decent boost to your best ball tournament teams. Does it have to be Carson Wentz? Nope. Nope.
Yeah.
Nope.
I mean, I have some Carson Wentz because it's not like a hard stack to create, right? Like I think you can even include. I have a lot of J.D. McKissick. I'll just be honest with you. I like McKissick because I think if Gibson goes down, I think we see McKissick catching a load of passes, and Wentz just is looking like a dump off machine from everything I've read out of training camp. So I'm pretty excited about J.D. McKissick, but Carson Wentz, it's like man, oh man.
Yeah. What are you going to
The
do if
only
you?
reason,
Yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead.
yeah, and the only reason why I'm remotely excited is because he's so cheap, right? And I think he's going to finish higher than quarterback 30, but quarterback 24 isn't going to win you your these best ball championship tournaments. But at the end of the day, I think Wentz is slightly better than people give him credit for, and I think he still has it in him to have like one crazy ass game that shifts everything.
Hey, you never know when that spike week occurs, right? So yeah, that's a possibility. But if you're having accuracy issues as a quarterback, just take the next logical step. What are you going to do? You're going to dump it off short area passes. We move on to Carson Wentz's former team, the one who knew to move on quickly, and is so far so good there. You know, you always root for these players to turn it around, but the Eagles are definitely on to Jalen Hurts. Their head coach, offensive coordinator, and defensive coordinators stay from the previous years, all the exact same. The big change offensively is the addition of wide receiver A.J. Brown. We were on a live NFL draft stream when the trade went down. We went pretty nuts, pretty exciting. His ADP, however, has stayed actually pretty steady throughout the offseason, moved slowly down the draft board from 24.9 in early best ball drafts to 26.4 right now. A.J. Brown, man, I know the Eagles are run first, barely passed it all in games that they won, but dude, this is different. Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown got the best friend narrative. You change an offensive scheme when you bring in a player like this. That's my opinion.
Yeah, and then also you look at Tennessee. It's not like Tennessee's throwing the ball 7,000 times a game, right? It's not like they're the Buccaneers. They were running the ball with Derrick Henry 30 times a game when Derrick Henry was healthy. So, and A.J. Brown was still a very good fantasy player. It does kind of suck, though, because I think if A.J. Brown went to, say, a more pass-heavy team, that he'd probably be a top 12 pick maybe in drafts, but now you get him at that discount because he's on the Eagles, and that's fine with me. I'm very excited about A.J. Brown, and maybe this isn't the player you wanted to talk about next. You talked about him in a video on the Fantasy Football channel. Devontae Smith might be legitimately the dumbest pick I've ever seen at pick like 70. Like, I think he has upside in best ball tournaments for those couple spike games. But besides that, the consistency you're going to get out of him is virtually nothing. And at the 70s range, the 80s range in drafts, there's a lot of receivers that could be legitimate league winners. And I just don't see that in Devontae Smith with A.J. Brown there and with how much Mr. Jalen Hurts loves throwing the ball to the tight end, Dallas Goedert.
Yeah, you mentioned it. The Stochastic Fantasy Football channel. That's fantasy football all year round. Obviously, this being the height of best ball season, we got all NFL all the time for you on this channel. But definitely give us a follow, a like, and subscribe over there. The Stochastic Fantasy Football channel. We're putting out all sorts of videos, basically exactly every single day, sometimes more than one a day over on the Stochastic Fantasy Football channel. So if you're looking to win your home league, absolutely check it out. And I did talk about the fact that the touch squeeze is on for basically all of these secondary receivers. I mean, I have high hopes for A.J. Brown because I think he's a legitimate superstar in the league. And I think Devonta Smith is fine as a complimentary piece. I think Dallas Goedert is great as a complimentary piece. I think Miles Sanders is just fine as a complementary piece to a solid overall offense with a superstar at the helm. That's A.J. Brown for you. I did actually hear that the team might trade for a running back, which makes me even more nervous about Miles Sanders, who continues to creep down into like 83, 85 overall in ADP. Kenny Gainwell is the one that I'm kind of interested in. His ADP has moved up a full round over the course of the offseason, and I still like him at 144th overall. He's really interesting to me. I just think that as like a possible scat back, 2-minute drill, player who is great in the receiving game, evades a lot of tackles, essentially free. If this team does turn it around in their offensive efficiency, I think there is going to be one beneficiary at the end of drafts. My guess is Gainwell. How about you?
Yeah, you see yesterday or 2 days ago, as you guys are watching this, Nick Sirianni was wearing a shirt that was just a Kenneth Gainwell shirt. Like, it wasn't like a jersey. It was
Yep.
just like, it said Kenny Gainwell, and it was like a picture of him. And I've been a Kenny Gainwell guy. That's not going to move the needle, right? Nick Sirianni wore a shirt that was like beat the Cowboys and then proceeded to lose by 70 in that game or whatever it was. That was a brutal game. But at the end of the day, Gainwell, I thought, would have seen more usage last year. And it was kind of confusing how they were using him. But I think now, last year was his rookie year. Maybe you just attributed to that. And I think the team's a little bit more confident in him. And it seems like Miles Sanders does not have a strong grasp over the number one role at all. And if
Yeah.
they do trade for Kareem Hunt, which is what I would assume the running back they would trade for is, unless they trade for Dearness Johnson, I'm going to be honest with you, then you just avoid everyone except for Kareem Hunt or Dearness Johnson. But here right now, I don't know if that's going to happen, so I'm still fine drafting Gainwell. The same thing with Sanders is kind of how I feel about Antonio Gibson. It's just not exciting at all.
That's fair. That's fair. I think he's exciting. I think that at a fantasy points per touch situation, Gainwell could be Alvin Kamara if given the opportunity. I don't think they should trade for someone. I think they should actually, if they do though, I think they should trade for someone on the Raiders. That running back room is way too crowded. I don't know what they're doing over there. All right, before we go on to the betting favorite to win the NFC East, just want to remind you guys, go ahead and like this video, subscribe to the channel. Bada bing, bada boom. You guys know what to do. And we are sponsored today by Drafters. You see the code at the bottom of the screen. Drafters, if you've already signed up on Underdog and need more action, looking for softer best ball contests, this is what we're talking about, guys. Finding an edge in all areas of sports betting, fantasy football, and best ball. Look no further than our new partnership with the Drafters Fantasy Football, fantasy sports. For a limited time, make your deposit of at least $20 and get a free $20 ticket into the Drafters $1 million Best Ball Championship. To claim your free ticket, just click the link in the description below or use promo code STOCHASTIC, STOKASTIC. If you put in 2 entries into the $1 million contest, you will get our Best Ball Draft Kit for free, courtesy of our new partnership with Drafters. That draft kit has rankings for tournaments like the Drafters Best Ball Million, and they've also got other platforms, other roster constructions like Superflex. They've also got you covered on the fantasy football side with your half PPR, PPR, and standard leagues. Everything you want, a $70 value just by putting in 2 entries into the $1 million Drafters contest. Promo code STOCHASTIC. Use it today.
Yeah,
all right, guys. Go for it. Go for it.
Yeah, and I was just going to say real quick, unlike these other websites, the $20 tournament, we can win, I think, $250,000 up front if you come first. Doesn't seem like that's going to fill. So there's going to be some overlay if you guys are new to DFS. These tournaments basically means that you're not going to be eating as much rake potentially if that is the case. And you have a better chance of winning, obviously, if not everyone enters. So that's one of the biggest reasons is why you might want to enter. And based on what I've seen, it seems like it might get 80% fill at max.
Wow. Well, yeah, that's really important. Another way to get that little bit of free money, finding edges everywhere. I like it a lot. All right, we move on to the Dallas Cowboys. Currently expected for 10 wins, a lofty expectation, but that's what they think they're getting this year for the Dallas Cowboys. A low expectation for the rest of the division. And now, Jerry Jones, the owner, coming out saying that Mike McCarthy, he believes in him. He believes that he can win a Super Bowl with this roster and this coach. CeeDee Lamb going inside the top 13 players now. Ezekiel Elliott almost outside the top 40 for the first time in his entire career in ADP. What are we doing with these top tier players in Lamb and Elliott? For just a little preview of our projections, we're not in on Elliott at ADP.
Yeah, if you could tell me that Mike McCarthy is going to smash a pumpkin or whatever he was doing before those games when they would go. Do you remember that? When it was like
Yeah,
the pumpkin smash narrative? We need that. Maybe then CeeDee Lamb will be a top, maybe the best receiver in fantasy football. But in reality, I am very much in on CeeDee Lamb. But at his ADP, I'm not necessarily thinking he's a smash pick because I still think Debo should be going clearly ahead of him. Same thing with Mike Evans. Maybe now people are nervous about Mike Evans, but I'm still pretty confident in him. I think CeeDee Lamb's a great player. I just think there's other receivers going around CeeDee Lamb to where it doesn't make CeeDee Lamb like when I see CeeDee Lamb when I'm up to pick, I'm not necessarily running up to the computer, I guess in this case, right? It's not like a real draft board, smacking my mouse and clicking select, right? I'm just not that excited about him. But there is reason to, obviously. He's the clear number one in an offense that if Dak Prescott can stay consistent, Lamb could easily be the number one receiver in fantasy.
I mean, that is in terms of upside what we're looking at, and in
Yeah.
in our tournament rankings for drafters and underdogs, we're seeing CeeDee Lamb at wide receiver 7 because of the emphasis on the upside that you could get. You know, we're pretty bold in those tournament rankings, guys. Like, you'll see people lower than you might very well expect. You'll see some names from like the 4th round as like our top 10 player. We do have a column, if you're looking at our best ball rankings, called RDP, which is a draft position that combines our projections and the average position draft position of the field. That's actually where we suggest taking a player. So that's huge when you're considering where and how to balance our projections and rankings versus the field. But man, CD's upside is number 1 wide receiver overall. That's how I see it. That's how, if you want to get, weird and draft CD at the end of the first, I don't think that's crazy. I said this on a previous podcast. If CeeDee Lamb fails, the Dallas Cowboys failed, right? Simple as that.
Yeah, and unless Jalen Tolbert's Jerry Rice or something, right? Jalen Tolbert becomes like the next best receiver in the league. But yeah, I completely agree with that. And to kind of piggyback off that point, you were talking about Zeke before. It seems like everyone's out on Zeke here at Stochastic. I'm not 100% out, but I'm also not in. I just think Ezekiel Elliott is just not very exciting. It's kind of just like you take him because all the other running backs are gone, and then you hope that he isn't one of those guys that, oh, you dumbass, you drafted him in the quote-unquote dead zone, and he's a dead zone running back. Shocker, right? Like, that's what you're hoping doesn't happen. So I'm fine with drafting Zeke, but not a guy that I'm reaching for in any means. I think you'd be crazy to reach for him, and he does get reached for in basically every redraft draft that I've done.
That might be a good suggestion. Take the chances when he falls below the RB dead zone. Because if you do enough of these best ball drafts, you'll find that some of these 4th, 5th round running backs, it's a rumor nobody wants them. And suddenly they're an 8th round pick and you're like, okay, click. Just like we were talking about with Antonio Gibson. The one that's much more exciting, and that I think their ADP would have been 2 rounds lower, 2 rounds later in the draft, maybe 5 years ago, but the ADP is just getting savvier now. It's Tony Pollard. Even Dalton Schultz, his teammate, who has a chance at 130, 140 targets within this offense. Tony Pollard is still the most exciting player. Top 10 in yards per target, yards created per touch. One of the most elusive backs in football. They already said they're not going to turn the reins over to him anytime soon, that Zeke is their back. But, man, if they ever gave Tony Pollard the shot at the bell cow running back role, what would it look like?
Look probably better than what it would look like if they gave Zeke the role, right? Probably. But again, the problem with drafting Tony Pollard for me is that Jerry Jones like just does what he wants to do, right? It doesn't seem like he really gives a fuck what anyone else says. So if he believes that Zeke needs to get the ball because for some reason he decided to back the Brinks truck up and give Zeke all this money, then Zeke's going to be getting the ball. It's not like Tony Pollard's just magically going to be super involved. So I'm not as invested in Pollard maybe as you are, but I do think if Zeke was to go down, then Pollard is in a situation where he could be a top 5 back every single week.
That's why I can't stop drafting him. Yep, that's why I can't stop drafting him. That number, again, we're looking at percentage chances of being the number 1 overall player. That's an incredibly important metric if you're doing simulations or things like that for best ball specifically. And compared to other players in the 80 to 90 range in ADP, Tony Pollard's projections and percentage chances are just different. Let's talk about the end of the players on this receiving core. They might really need to sign a veteran with James Washington going down for multiple weeks. Jalen Tolbert is like an okay prospect to me, like a 3rd round pick for a reason. And now everyone is like, no, he's the second coming of Jesus. You're big on Jalen Tolbert, but is it really just an opportunity thing within a solid offense?
Yeah, of course, it's not that Jalen Tolbert is like the best player ever. It really is just everything to do with the opportunity. And if you told me Michael Gallup was in week one, I would run directly away from Jalen Tolbert. But everything is telling me that Michael Gallup is not going to be ready for week one, that Michael Gallup might be missing a decent amount of the season. And in that case, Jalen Tolbert, for at least the first couple of weeks of the season, is going to be in a very good position. And Michael Gallup isn't that great, right? So Jalen
Yeah.
Tolbert could be in a very good situation. And like you said, they don't have very much depth on this team. Try to, if you're in the audience right now and you're not someone who follows fantasy football like we have to, because, you know, it's our job, try to name some other random wide receiver that's on the Dallas Cowboys besides Michael Gallup, CeeDee Lamb, and Jalen Tolbert. It is going to be very hard to name that guy or one of those guys. And it really does, to me, seem like Jalen Tolbert's locked in as the number 2 guy. And if this offense, like I said, it's all about Dak. If Dak is able to stay consistent, Jalen Tolbert does have the upside to be a top 24 receiver. And if CeeDee Lamb went down today, where does Jalen Tolbert go? Probably in the 5th round.
Wow. Wow.
Right? Because
23-year-old prospect. I mean, he had 1,400 yards at South Alabama as a 23-year-old.
Yeah.
I'm surprised here. I don't really like to put too much weight in comparable players, but Player Profiler does do a good job of comparing prospect metrics and making decent comps. And I'm really surprised to see Adam Thielen's name as Jalen Tolbert's best comp. And if you told me that Tolbert didn't have a huge volume workload, but he did have a really, really solid touchdowns per target rate at the end of the year, that is something I could get behind. That is something I could get behind. But same with Michael Gallup. Honestly, you talk about comps there. His comp is Justin Blackmon, who for a moment was an excellent football player, off the field stuff notwithstanding. So just an interesting team worth betting on. This is why Dallas players continue to creep up in drafts. Honestly, I'm just taking chances at ADP, especially on all of these receivers. I was on James Washington. Now I guess I got to stop. Any last words on the Cowboys before we get out of here?
Yeah, and I was going to say, if you're off that Dalton Schultz bandwagon where you think, oh, Dalton Schultz kind of scored too many touchdowns last year, he's not going to be as involved this year, then that's even more reason for you, if you're low on Dalton Schultz, to be in on Jalen Tolbert, because Jalen Tolbert might just be the guy scoring all the touchdowns.
Don't like to bet on touchdowns all the time, but in best ball, when we got to look for number 1 upside, as I've been saying all show long, that's what we got to look for. This has been another division breakdown. Really fun stuff here. Follow him, Nick Lepre, at Notorious FNTSY. I don't think I told you who I was. I'm Matt Savoca. Follow me at Draftaholic. You can see there on the screen if you're watching on YouTube. Almost done with these divisional breakdowns. Keep it here on the Best Ball channel. We'll be doing live drafts, late night drafts, more strategy videos as we get into the heart of draft season. For Nick, I'm Matt. We'll see you guys later.